Hi everyone, Jai Hind and good morning. Welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IS in English. My name is Bhanwar Singh from MXNDA 115th course and qualified civil services in 2012. And I welcome you onto the platform of StudyIQ. Now once again we'll be doing the Hindu analysis, and we'll be taking today's The Hindu. We'll be taking the Delhi edition, and then we'll be moving ahead and we'll be doing the complete analysis of the important articles which are there in our today's session. Alright, so let's start off with the session and let's see which are the important headlines or the important articles which are there. And please type it in the chat box and let me know that you're watching this session live along with me. But before that, let me tell you that this is my Telegram channel where you will find the complete PDF. So you can join the Telegram channel so that ultimately you do not miss the PDF of today's the complete session. Alright, good morning, Vikram. Now, let's start and let's move ahead, and which are the important articles that we'll be discussing today in today's the complete analysis. The first one is about the high power task force that has been it has been constituted for the examination reforms. All right, so there had been a total of 36-day protest that was organized at Jantar Mantar, and now we can see it's the implication that is there on the total examination reform system. And let's see what will happen in the future as well. The second thing we'll be talking about is India-China policy matrix. This is where we'll be discussing the editorial which is there in our today's The Hindu by Shashi Tharoor. Then we'll be talking about the mesh networks, the digital rights and the intermediary rights as well. Now again, this is about a mesh network, or you can say BitChat. There is a complete article about this, and again we'll be understanding what are the mesh networks are all about. Right. Right, then we'll be talking about the modern legal publishing and the open standards as well. There is a complete article about how the laws, they had to be codified and they had to be published in India. So again, this is quite important. Then we'll be talking about the next that is dengue vaccine approval, and also the immunity risk paradox as well, because when it comes to India, so we have the first dengue vaccine that had been approved named Quidenga, that had been manufactured by Japan. All right, then we'll be talking about Cauvery river water dispute as well, and also the RBI monetary policy mandate, and even NASA's PRAXIS mission as well. So these are the important articles which pertains to your mains and your prelims preparation, and thereby these are quite important. Let's move ahead and let's talk about the quote that we have for today. It is by Sam Pitroda, and he says that the strength of a democracy is measured not by the absence of the criticism, but by its willingness to listen and reform. So again, quite important, because this pertains to editorial that had been written by Sam Pitroda himself. No, I have not watched it, Vikram. All right, but at the same time, it is quite important that ultimately we have the Commonwealth Games that had been organized, or it is being held at Glasgow, and we have the first gold that had been won by Mirabai Chanu. So that is again very important news. It is the first gold that we have clinched in the Commonwealth Games, and ultimately this also completes her hat trick as well, because she had clinched the golds previously as well, when we had the Commonwealth Games that were organized in 2018, in 2022 as well. All right, so over here we have the word of the day, that is aplomb, and ultimately this is basically, it relates to the complete poise, the assurance and the self-confidence, especially in a difficult or challenging situation. The synonym is calmness or composure and even coolness. So over here you can say the usage that is given is that she answered the difficult questions with aplomb, or you can also say that Mirabai Chanu won the gold with aplomb. All right, Ms. Verma, good morning. All right, so let's start the discussion of, or the analysis of the important articles that we have. But before that, let me tell you that today is, 27th of July. And today is the batch that we are, opening. And the batch is starting for the GS Foundation batches that is there available on the platform of StudyIQ. And you can enroll into this batch by using the code BRSLive that will give you the maximum discount. Good morning, Apex. All right, let's start and let's see which is the first news that we are discussing today. It is Nilekani to lead the high-powered committee that had been constituted. So again, this is quite important because Prime Minister Modi, he had constituted or announced a high-powered task force that will be under Nandan Nilekani to make India's exam system leak-proof and even technology-driven. Now, this is quite important because ultimately this announcement comes a day after when Dharmendra Pradhan, who was the union, education minister, he had resigned, and ultimately over here, this is again quite important because the complete committee that had been formed, or the complete task force that had been formed, it also includes the ex-ISRO chief S. Somnath, even the IIT Madras director V. Kamakoti, and ex-IB chief Tapan Deka, along with ex-education secretary Anita Karwal as well. Now, this is quite important because after the sacking of or after the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan as the education minister, we have Prahlad Joshi, who has taken the charge, and ultimately he have reviewed the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, the PM Shri and PM Poshan Yojana as well. Now, this is quite important because there is a complete video that I have uploaded in the video section that you can see, where I have discussed about the education spending, because ultimately when it comes to the spending of the education, yes, when it comes to the complete or the immediate factor or the trigger that was there for the education, that was the leakage of the NEET UG examination. But also this is why very important because the root cause of the complete issue is that we are spending less on the education. The public spending has, in the terms of the percentage, it has declined, and you can see the complete video in the video section as well. Now, over here, this is quite important because when it comes to the Congress or the opposition, they have said that ultimately the centre has yet to implement the 101 recommendations that were given by, or that were, recommended by K. Radhakrishnan committee, which was formed after 2024 NEET crisis, or the NEET paper crisis that we had seen. Now, this is quite important because we have seen when it comes to the complete perspective, so there had been the repeated paper leaks or the systemic leaks, and that have led to the formation of this high-powered task force that we are talking about right now. Even when it comes to the complete probing of the leak system or the paper leaks, the complete probing had been quite opaque, and there had been over-centralization of the single high stakes examination as well, like for example when it comes to NEET or the UGC NET as well. Now, this is again very important because when it comes to the NTA, so we have the NTA that was formed in 2017. Please remember this. The formation was in 2017, and ultimately when it comes to the various examination system that we have, they were centralized, and now we have the single high stakes examination when it comes to the examinations, like we have the NEET, we have the and the examinations as well, like for example UGC NET as well, which are conducted by the NTA along with the JEE examination as well. Now, there are the implications because we have seen when ultimately that's, the 37 days or the 36 days of the protest when it comes. So, ultimately that shows that there has been the erosion of the trust in the meritocratic institutions. And this is a test case for the government's outreach for the Gen Z ahead of 2028 elections as well. Now, over here, this is quite important because the challenges that are there in front of us is basically balancing the tech fixes with the humane exam design, and resignation becoming a pressure wall rather than a genuine reform. That could also be a factor that we have to see over here. Now, this also pertains to the various global, you can say, the global perspective when it comes to the such kind of examination, because when it comes to the examination reforms, so there is a factor that we can see, and it is about China's. We have Gaokao system that is there. Now, over here, when it comes to Gaokao, basically you can see that here what happens is that it is quite you can say a kind of because we know what happens in China is basically a kind of communist regime that is there. And what happens there is that before the setting of the examination, what is done is that the teachers, they are taken into a kind of a solitary confinement, and then the paper is set. and there had been zero kind of, you can say, the paper leakages that had been there in China. So that is one of the model that we can see, and the security protocols that can be implemented in India as well, but not in the same manner as it is in the communist China or the communist regime that is there. Now this also relates to another another impact, or you can say another news, because I was reading in the morning, and that was about the prevention, or you can say the Public Examination Prevention of the Unfair Means Act that was passed in 2024. Now, there would be, or there are the certain, changes or the amendments which had been proposed by the cabinet, and that bill will be tabled today in the parliament itself. So let's see how that goes on, and how the complete the issue that is taken up in the parliament. Now, coming to the next important news that we have, it is again, I told you that this is the editorial that we are talking about by Shashi Tharoor, and it is about the China or Indo-China perspective. Now, when it comes to Dr. Shashi Tharoor, so he have written over here, and he also cautions that there should not be a hasty or the unreciprocated economic reset with the China. That must be driven by the short-term corporate pressures, despite that there is the growing policy volatility that we are seeing in Washington. And we have seen that the US, when it comes to the US or the trade with the US, so there had been tariffs which had been imposed. Recently, there is the 10% tariff that had been imposed over India, and also there are the visa restrictions that had happened. Over here, this is quite important, because ultimately the influential business lobbies, they have argued that India's deep reliance that is there on the Chinese capital, that is there, and there is also APIs, basically where the complete pharmaceutical industry, it depends on the active pharmaceutical ingredients for the production of the pharma, or you can say the medicines that we are being made right now. There is also tunnel boring components, and the machines and even the solar inputs requires the easing of the post-Galwan investment measures or the restrictions which had been there. Now, what are the post-Galwan restrictions which were there? So there is basically the press note 3. There was the press note 3 that was issued in in 2020. And according to press note 3 2020, what had happened was that there were the restrictions which were made on the investment that has to be made by the countries which are bordering India. And thereby this is quite important, because this pertains to press note 3 as well. All right. Also, we can say that when it comes to the persisting Chinese aggression, so that had been there along with the line of actual control, or LAC, where we have seen that there had been the skirmishes which happened in 2013 at Debsang, in Shumar in 2014, in Doklam, and even in the Galwan as well. So alongside, we are seeing that ultimately when it comes to Beijing, so Beijing or the China, it actually lays down its claim over the Arunachal Pradesh as well. And also we have seen that the China, it had shared the military intelligence with Pakistan during the Operation Sindoor as well. So over here, this complete article, it actually cautions that India should not move towards, towards the reset of the economic ties with the China in the, or amidst the pressure that we are facing along with the US as well. Now, this is quite important, because after 2020 clash, what had happened was that there were strict economic measures that were against China that were taken. There were more than 200 of the apps that were banned. Even the FDI rules were amended under the PNS prior approval route for the land bordering countries or the nations. That was according to the press note 3 that was issued. And also there were the barring of the Chinese vendor from the 5G trials as well. All right, there had been also, when it comes to the complete perspective, you can see that there is a trade deficit that we have with China. And this trade deficit that have crossed 100 billion annually as well, where we are, we are importing more from China as compared to that what we are exporting, and that have created an economic kill switch vulnerability as well. This is same as that is there between India and Pakistan. Because when it comes to India and Pakistan, we export more as compared to importing of the Pakistani goods. So ultimately, when it comes to the complete perspective, you have to note over here that when it comes to the strategic alliances and even the strategic imperatives, so what used to happen before was that we used to talk about geopolitical tensions, but now they have changed to geo-economic scenario. So ultimately now, along with the land, there is the economic consideration that has to be taken. And again, there is a very important fact that you have to note over here, and that is that we have crossed the trade deficit of $100 billion with China annually. And thereby, any kind of disruption that is there, so that will have impact on the economic scenario in India as well. Now, this is about the salami slicing as well. Now, what is salami slicing, or what is the concept of salami slicing? Now, salami slicing actually means where we have the incremental advancement of the military or even the territorial alterations actually that avoids the full-scale war while creating the new facts on the grounds as well. And that is what we are seeing in the case of the Chinese, you can say the position where the Chinese, forces, they are basically present on the grounds in Arunachal Pradesh, and they are moving towards salami slicing. But at the same time, this also pertains to another important fact that we are moving ahead, and that is about the military objectives, where the Border Road Organization, it is constructing the new infrastructure in the border regions that is to, move against the salami slicing that is being done by the China. Also, this pertains to the weaponized interdependence, where it is basically exploiting the asymmetric dominance in the global supply chains, like for example, the rare earth elements or the APIs for the geopolitical leverage. So again, these are the two important concepts that you must remember when it comes to India and China perspective. Now, over here, this is quite important because when it comes to the dual reality, so when it comes to the strategic and security, we have the LAC standoffs and the salami slicing by China. There is also Pakistan-China nexus, which we have seen during the Operation Sindoor, and there is unilateral renaming in Arunachal Pradesh as well. But at the same time, there is the economic reality that we have to see when it comes to India and China, where we have more than $100 billion of the trade deficit with China. There is heavy API and tech reliance, and even the business lobby, it is pushing for the reset of the India and China relations. So again, this is quite important because this pertains to Indo-China and the Sino-China relationships. Now, the causes of the reset is, or the pressure is, that there is the threat of the US protectionist trade, where we are seeing that the US is moving towards the tariffs which are there on the steel and the aluminium, and also that is causing the panic among the Indian exporters and the industrial units. Now, over here, this is quite important because dismantling post-Galwan economic leverage without resolving the territorial status quo, it will leave India permanently vulnerable to the coercive diplomacy by the China. And the advantage of the firm pressure is basically that it drives the domestic industrial substitution, where it is basically about Atmanirbhar Bharat, and also diversifying the supply chains through the Quad or the European partnership is where India must look after. Now, ultimately, the challenges that we have is that there are the higher short-term manufacturing costs and even the inflation due to the missing cheap Chinese intermediate inputs, and that is why the lobby or the industrial lobby, it is pressuring that we must move towards the resetting of the India and China relationships when it comes to the complete perspective. Now, this is quite important because these are where we have the Chinese claim line that you can see, and ultimately this is the international boundary which is recognized by India. Over here, you can see that we had in May, there was Depsang Plains where we have the Daulat Beg Oldie, airstrip as well that is located over here. Here, there had been skirmishes. Then in the Galwan Valley as well. Then at the Pangong Tso also. So these are the regions, the hot springs. We have Pangong Tso, we have Galwan Valley, and even Depsang Plains where there were these skirmishes which happened in 2020. All right. Now, coming to the next important news that we have is about the why as India moved to take down BitChat repositories. Now, this is about, ultimately when it comes to the complete perspective. So, this is about BitChat, where the Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center, or I4C, please remember that this is under the Ministry of Home Affairs, or MHA. It has issued a directive under Section 79(3)(b) of the IT Act. And it have instructed the GitHub to remove the repositories which are basically hosting the BitChat. Now, BitChat is basically an open source Bluetooth mesh messaging app which had been developed by Jack Dorsey. Now, what happens over here is that when it comes to such kind of app, so there is no number that is required. There is also no Wi-Fi. There is no network that is required. And just by using the Bluetooth, you can message one another. And over here what has happened was that this app was basically used during the protest when there was the internet that was banned at the in the central Delhi. So this app was basically used for passing the messages between the protesters, and that is why the Ministry of Home Affairs, it has moved forward for blocking or for actually removing the repositories of hosting the BitChat. Now here the Ministry of Home Affairs, it is stated that the application facilitates the serverless, like I said, that there is no internet that is required, off-grid communication or anonymous communication system without the phone number registration, even creating the potential for coordinating unlawful assemblies or bypassing the internet shutdowns during the public order crisis. So this BitChat was basically used during the protest that we have seen at the Jantar Mantar. Now here, when it comes to the Internet Freedom Foundation or IFFF, it has challenged the order, arguing that the banning of the tool based on the anticipated misuse, it actually fails the proportionality test that had been laid down by the Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India case in the Supreme Court. And thereby, this is quite important news when it comes to the complete perspective, because this is about Bluetooth mesh network. Now, what happens in Bluetooth mesh network is that there is a decentralized communication protocol where each device, it actually acts as both a client and even a relay node, hoping the messages across the physical proximity without the central internet servers. Like for example, if there is a phone 1, like say we have a phone 1, so there is a message that it goes to the phone 2, and then it will move towards 3 or 4 as well. So ultimately, when it comes to a mesh networking or the Bluetooth mesh networking here, the second is acting as the client and even a relay node for the message to pass through to the other phones as well. And that is what mesh networking is all about. Now, there is a safe harbor provision that has been provided under Section 79 of the IT Act, where basically it is the immunity which has been granted to the digital intermediaries. The intermediaries, like for example GitHub, which actually host the other parties software or the other parties messages. So ultimately over here they get the kind of immunity from the third party content liability, provided that they comply with the government takedown notices. And we have seen this Section 79 previously as well, where the government have asked for when it comes to the various tweets or even the various messages which had been portrayed on the various platforms, whether it is X, whether it is Facebook, whether it is Instagram. So whenever the government wants to take down those messages, government can use Section 79 and ask the intermediaries to take down those particular messages or the softwares as well which had been hosted on these intermediaries. Now over here, this is also about the principle of proportionality that had been laid by the Anuradha Bhasin in the Supreme Court, where actually it is about the standard which requires that any government restriction that is there on the fundamental right, it must be necessary, it must also be legitimate, and there must be least restrictive measure that must be taken by the government for restricting the fundamental rights. And thereby this is quite important when it comes to the complete perspective. Now, like I said, why this banning or why the government have asked for removing the repositories of the BitChat? So this is because the internet shutdowns near the protest site, they have pushed the users towards the offline mesh tools, and the law enforcement anxiety over the untraceable coordination is basically the real reason behind this push for banning or for taking down the repositories of the BitChat. Now, the implication is that it will set a precedent for the regulation or regulating the decentralized technologies' possible chilling effect on the protest era communication as well. Now, over here, the challenge that is there is basically distinguishing the potential misuse from the actual illegality, ensuring the judicial review of the intermediary takedowns as well. That is quite a challenge in front of us when it comes to such kind of the orders which are passed down by the government itself. Now, there is again, there was a protest in Hong Kong. All right, I don't know if you remember, but it was in 2019 where such kind of Bluetooth mesh app was actually used in Hong Kong in 2019, and the app's name was BridgeFi. All right, please remember this, may be asked in your prelims examination. All right, now coming to the next important news that we have, it is why India must modernize the way government publishes the laws and regulation. Now, this is quite important because when it comes to the laws and regulation, if you have to go through the internet, you will not find the laws and the regulations in a single place. All right, there are various repositories which are there, and thereby this is why very important when it comes to the laws and the regulations, because this article is about consolidation of all these. Now over here, this is where we have the legal tech founder Sushant Sinha. He highlights that there is a systemic flaws in the India's legal publishing ecosystem, where we have the government laws, the amendments, and even the notifications. So they remain trapped in the static PDF gazettes which are created in 1990s. Now, there is a striking example that we have seen. Like, for example, there are several key provisions of the CRPC amendment or the Criminal Code Procedure Amendment Act that was made in 2005 under the section 16, 25, 28, 38 and the others, which had remained unnotified even after more than 20 years. Now, this is a fact which had been discovered only through the RTI queries, because the Gazette publishing, it is basically fragmented across various ministries that we have. Now, this is quite important because ultimately this article, it advocates that we must adopt the international open legal standards. Like, for example, there is Acoma Nitoso, that is XML markup for the legal documents. Now, we should use such kind of the legal standards to make the Indian laws machine readable, searchable and fully accessible to the citizens, even lawyers and the judiciary as well, so that we can actually search the laws, the regulations, the amendments online without any flaws. Now, this is quite important because I don't know if you have read about this, but it was actually in 1905, what happened was, sorry, 1906, not 5, that Mahatma Gandhi actually translated the Transvaal Black Act in the Indian opinion. Now, over here, he had realized that the citizens, they cannot defend their rights under the laws until and unless they cannot read it. So you can connect this with the 1906, what Mahatma Gandhi did, because ultimately there has to be, we have to know about rights. We have to know about the laws. We have to know about the acts, the regulations, and even the amendments which had been made. And we know that this is the era of the internet. So ultimately, these laws, these amendments, they must be published and they must be accessible to the citizens. And that is what exactly Mahatma Gandhi did in 1906, when actually he translated the complete Black Act and he published it in the Indian opinion. Now, over here, the current bottlenecks that we have is that laws which basically they are scattered across the central or the state gazette as well. And they are the unindexed PDF with the non-standard regional fonts determining the exact state of the law. On a historical date, it actually requires the manual cross-referencing of the hundreds of the amendments or the hundreds of the notifications which had been made, and thereby this actually article, it lays down that there must be a standard that must be utilized. Like, for example, there are the global standards that we can see. In US, there is USLM, that is the US legislative markup for the bulk downloading and the automated tracking. In the UK as well, there is basically a legislation.gov.uk which use CLML, that is Crown Legislation Markup Language, and the African nations, they use or they have widespread adopted the open source Indigo legal publishing platform using Acoma Nitoso. But when it comes to India Code, we have the India Code portal which actually exists, but actually it suffers from the delayed updates and even unindexed PDF uploads which had been made on the India Code portal. All right. Now, coming to the next news that we have is that we have India's first dengue vaccine which arrives with a crucial safety caveat. Now, this is very important article because we have the DGCI or the Drug Controller General of India which have approved the first vaccine for the dengue in India, that is Quiddenga. Now, this vaccine is basically developed by Takeda, that is in Japan, and for the individuals which is between the age of 4 to 60 years, regardless of the prior dengue exposure. Now, why this is important is, or why this article is important, because it actually pertains to the phase 3 clinical trial data. Now, over here, there was phase 3 clinical trial that was conducted across 20,000 of the children, and it has showed that there has been efficacy of nearly about 80%. Now, the detailed trial data that had been published in the Nature Medicine, it highlights that there is a major safety concern with Quiddenga, and that is that the antibody-dependent enhancement or ADE is there in the dengue seronegative individuals. Now, who are the seronegative individuals? All right. So, we have two different type of individuals. We have seropositive, we have seronegative. Now, suppose I contracted with dengue. So after I contracted with dengue, what happens is that my body actually makes the antibodies against dengue. So that is, I become seropositive, that I have already the antibodies which are there in my body. So I am seropositive. But a person who has not contracted with dengue, he will not have the antibodies present in his body and he will be termed as seronegative. So over here it highlights that there is a major safety concern about the antibody dependent enhancement in the case of dengue seronegative individuals, and specifically it says that the seronegative children which had been vaccinated with Qdenga, they exhibited 25% higher susceptibility to severe Dengue 3 infection upon the natural exposure, and that have necessitated the pre-vaccination sero screening as well. So ultimately, when it comes to the complete perspective, it is very important that in the case of the seronegative children, there could be 25% higher severability in the case of Dengue 3 infection as well. Now, this is quite important because when it comes to dengue, it is actually caused by the 4 of the distinct RNA viruses which are there. We have Dengue 1, Dengue 2, Dengue 3 and Dengue 4. Now, primary infection by one of the serotype. All right, if you have, if you have a dengue earlier, so what happens is that generally we say that if you have contracted a disease, so then what happens is that the next time there is a very less probability. But at the same time, if it is by the next or the another distinct RNA virus, there could be the dengue that you can contract. Now, over here, this is quite important because one serotype, if you have contracted it, so it will provide you lifelong immunity against that specific serotype. But when it comes to the another types, so there will be only temporary immunity that will be provided against the others. Now, immunity risk paradox is that when it comes to the secondary infection by a different serotype, frequently it triggers the severe dengue, that is dengue hemorrhagic figure or dengue shock syndrome as well, due to the immune system overreaction. So this is quite important because there is 25% of the vulnerability that we are talking about in the children in the case of Qdenga, and I guess that the Central Drug Authority, it must look after the complete data as well before prescribing the vaccination. What should I repeat? All right. Now, when it comes to the dengue, so remember that dengue is actually not caused by just single RNA virus. There are 4 different strains of the virus which are there. We have Dengue 1, we have Dengue 2, Dengue 3 and Dengue 4 as well. Now, what happens is that there is immunity risk paradox because ultimately when it comes to any of the virus that you have contracted, so that will provide you lifelong immunity against that particular RNA virus. But it will not provide you with the lifelong immunity against the other RNA viruses. So what happens is that if you contract the dengue again, so there is a risk, and the risk is that there could be the severe dengue syndromes that can develop. There could be dengue hemorrhagic fever or the dengue shock syndrome as well. Now, when it comes to the Qdenga vaccination, so over here you can see that when it comes to the detailed trial data, so over here this has lead down to the safety concern, that is antibody dependent enhancement, where basically there are 25% of the high susceptibility to the severe Dengue 3 infections, and that is one of the risks that we are talking about related to Qdenga vaccination. All right. Now, coming to the next one, it is about the Cauvery issue. Now, what is the Cauvery issue, or what this article talks about is that we have a significant departure when it comes to the complete Cauvery water dispute. So, the Tamil Nadu's traditional legalistic stance had been departed by the Chief Minister C. Joseph Vijay, and he have announced that there will be direct bilateral negotiations that will be there with the Karnataka CM D.K. Shivakumar in Bengaluru to address the Cauvery water deficit that is there. Now, when it comes to the complete perspective, you can see that between June 1 to July 23, what had happened was that Tamil Nadu had received only near about 3.5 TMC fit of the water against its mandated share of 32 TMC fit due to the deficient monsoon rainfall in the upper catchment regions. Now, this outreach has basically driven the criticism from the local farmer associations and even the political groups, which actually fear that there will be direct political talks which will basically bypass the established statutory bodies like we have Cauvery Water Management Authority or CWMA, and the risk is that there will be reopening contentious project like, for example, Mekadatu balancing reservoir. Now, this Mekadatu balancing reservoir is the project that was announced by Karnataka, but at the same time, this was opposed by Tamil Nadu. Now, this is quite important because this particular relates to the Cauvery water now, or the Cauvery river. When it comes to Cauvery river, remember that this is the most disputed river that we have in country. Now, this starts from the origin is from Tal Cauvery, which lies in Brahmagiri Hills in Kodagu. Now, this is one of the major peninsular river that we are talking about, and it is also known as the Dakshin Ganga as well. Now, over here, when it comes to the complete length, it is nearly about 800 kilometers, which actually flows from Karnataka. Then it enters Tamil Nadu, and over here it also forms the boundary of Short Stitch, and then it empties into the we have the Bay of Bengal that is over here. Now, over here you can see it's the tributaries as well. We have Harangi, we have Hemavati, we have Arkavati, and then we have over here we have Gotwami as well. Alright, at the same time, you can see over here, we have Lakshman Tirth, Shimsha, Kabini, Bhavani, Noyal and Amravati as well, which are basically the tributaries. Now, I told you, when it comes to the tributaries, you can see that in which direction the river is flowing. And on the basis of the direction in which it is flowing, you can see that which are the left-hand side tributaries and which are the right-hand side tributaries as well. Now, there are various dam projects which are here. Like, for example, there is KRS or the Krishnaraj Sagar Dam located in Mysuru. Then we have the Kabini Dam as well, that is located in Kodagu in Karnataka itself. Then we have Hemavati Dam at Hassan in Karnataka. We have Mettur Dam, which is which have the reservoir, which is also called as Stenley Reservoir. Then we have the Lower Bhavini project and the Amravati Dam as well. So these are the important dams which are there. Now, over here, this is also quite important because when it comes to the complete, award of the water. So the award of the water, or the final award that was given, the final award was in 2007. So final award was given by 2007 by the dispute tribunal, or the Cauvery Water Dispute Tribunal, that is there, CWDT. But what happened was later on in 2018. In 2018, Supreme Court actually mandated that, or Supreme Court actually amended the complete, water that was allocated as per the dispute tribunal that is there. And ultimately what happened was that there was creation of the Cauvery Water Management Authority, and even there was creation of the Cauvery Water, there was the committee as well that was formed related to the Cauvery water. Also, when it comes to the complete perspective, remember that this is when it comes to the interstate water boundary disputes or the interstate river water disputes. So it actually pertains to Article 262 of the Constitution. Alright, so again, Article 262, it becomes important because ultimately this relates to the interstate river water disputes or the adjudication of the interstate river water disputes as well. Now, coming to the next news, that is again the inflation control remains RBI's foremost priority, that has been said by the governor. Now, again, this is quite important because this news pertains to the MPC or the Monetary Policy Committee, where the RBI governor, he have affirmed that the inflation control is basically the foremost priority right now in front of the RBI. Also, under the MPC, their framework also while supporting that there should be the growth to the extent possible. Now, over here, when it comes to the complete perspective, you can see that the foreign measures which had been taken by, or the forex measures which had been taken by the RBI, so they have generated massive, capital, or you can say the foreign capital, where the banks have mobilized nearly 32 billion through the FCNRB deposits. Now, FCNRB deposits are basically where we have the NRIs or the Indians which are there in the, or they are staying outside or in the foreign countries. Now, what they do is they actually deposit their funds in the FCNRB deposits, which are basically only for the NRI accounts. While we have the government securities which have attracted more than $7 billion in the foreign portfolio inflows as well, following the recent policy tweaks which had been taken by the RBI. Now, over here, this is quite important because Malhotra or the Governor Malhotra, he have dismissed the overvaluation concerns regarding the Indian rupee, stating the interventions aim strictly at smoothing the excessive volatility that is there, and basically the rupee, it actually remains competitively aligned in the real effective exchange rate or REER terms. Now, this is quite important because there are few concepts that you must remember, and that is we have FCNRB deposits that I told you that here the foreign currency non-resident bank deposits are basically for only the NRIs. Now, they maintain the foreign currency accounts in India while basically they shield themselves from the exchange rate risk. Also, there is FTT or the flexible FIT, flexible inflation targeting, where basically this relates to the statutory framework mandating the RBI to mandate the CPI or the consumer price index inflation at 4% plus minus 2% as well. And we have seen recently that the CPI, it has breached the 4% mark. Now, there is also NEER as compared to REER. Now, nominal exchange or effective exchange rate, which is weighted average of the foreign currencies, it is adjusted for the domestic as compared to the foreign inflation differentials, which yields the real effective exchange rate. So when it comes to the nominal, so nominal actually has the inflation as well, that is also included. But when it comes to a real effective exchange rate, so over here the inflation is not actually included, and that is what the REER and the nominal or the NEER is basically all about. Now, coming to the next news is about the PRAXIS or the new you can say kind of project, or you can say the space exploration mission of NASA. Now, over here NASA have selected the futuristic space exploration mission concept that has been titled PRAXIS. Now, PRAXIS is basically planetary rings autonomous exploration with in situ sampling for the phase 1 funding under the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts or NIAC 2026 program. Now, over here, what is according to the mission? So, in this mission, there will be a bio-inspired AI-driven robotic explorer, which will be designed to perform the touch and go sampling of the ring particles around the outer gas giants, like for example Saturn, marking humanity's first attempt to directly sample the planetary ring material. Over here, unlike the traditional spacecraft that risk the catastrophic high-speed collisions, will graze the ring plane at a safe distance, deploying a long flexible boom guided by the real-time edge AI to snag the floating ice or the rock particles, and then they will be taken back to the mission, and they will be studied by the NASA. So that is what the PRAXIS mission is all about. So these are the important news or the articles that you will find in our today's The Hindu. And now is the time for the questions. The first question that we have for today is, with reference to the K. Radhakrishnan Committee and the NTA, consider the following statements. First one, the Radhakrishnan Committee recommended a complete transition from pen and paper exam to the computer-based testing and computer adaptive testing for all examinations. Second, the committee proposed the establishment of state-level coordination committees and the district-level coordination committees to coordinate security with local law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Third, the NTA is a statutory body established under the provisions of the NEP 2020. So what will be the right answer? Let's see. Yes, the correct answer is B, that is 2 only. Remember, the first one is also incorrect and the third one is also incorrect. We have only second that is correct. Remember that you may be asked about Radhakrishnan Committee. It is important for your prelims. All right, now coming to the next important question that we have, consider the following statements regarding the Information Technology Act 2000 and the regulation of the digital content. First, Section 69A provides the Union Government with the primary power to direct the blocking of the public access to information through any computer resource on grounds of the national security and public order. Then Section 79(3)B regulates the safe harbor protection of the intermediaries, requiring them to expeditiously remove access to content upon receiving notice of unlawful activity. Then the Supreme Court in Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India ruled that internet and communication restrictions must satisfy the test of proportionality. Right. So what will be the correct answer here? So what will be the correct answer? Right. Over here, when it comes to section 69A, it actually provides with the blocking power. The blocking power actually is with the government, that actually comes from section 69A. And when it comes to section 79, that actually provides for the safe harbor provision. Alright, it is about the safe harbor provision. And then the third statement is also right. Alright, so we have 1, 2, 3, that is D. That is the correct answer. Now coming to the next one, with reference to the ACOMO NITOSO standard in legislative informatics, consider the following statements. First, it is an international XML-based technical standard designed to represent legislative, executive and judicial documents in a machine-readable format. Second, it was originally developed under United Nations initiatives to support the digitization of parliamentary records in Africa. Then the standard enables automated systems to track, cross-reference and dynamically apply successive amendments to the principled acts. So which of the statements given above are correct? Let's see what will be the correct answer for this one. We have question number 3 on the front of your screen. So we have again 1, 2 and 3, that is all the statements are correct here. We have first, that is true. We have second also, and the third also. We have all the statements which are true regarding the ACOMO NITOSO. Then we have fourth question, that is with reference to the Qdenga vaccine and dengue immunology. Consider the following statement. First, Qdenga is a live attenuated tetravalent vaccine approved to protect against all 4 dengue virus serotypes, Dengue 2, Dengue 4. Then antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE, is an immunological phenomena where pre-existing antibodies can bind to a different viral serotype and facilitate its entry into host cells, potentially increasing the severity of the infection. Then clinical trial data shows that Qdenga exhibits negative efficacy against the Dengue 3 serotype in seronegative individuals. So what will be the right answer? So what will be the correct answer here? We have another question, question number 4. I'm getting A. No. Actually, when it comes to the clinical data, that is true. That basically Qdenga exhibits negative efficacy against Dengue 3. And that is why it is a concern. That is why it is a concern. That is why we have spoken about this. That what actually happens is that if a person contracts Dengue 3 type of the virus, so then there would be a problem, because this Qdenga vaccine, it has a negative efficacy against Dengue 3 serotype. So although this has been, approved to protect against all 4 dengue virus serotypes, but it has negative efficacy against Dengue 3 serotype. We have all the 3 statements which are true here, and thereby the answer will be D. That is 1, 2 and 3. Then comes to the next one. We have considered the following pairs of transboundary river water management concepts and their definitions. We have first, riparian rights, the legal rights of states and landowners bordering a watercourse regarding downstream and upstream flow. Then proportionate reduction, where a water sharing principle where deficits during the low rainfall years are shared equitably among the riparian states. And Mekadethu Dam, the project, here a proposed balancing reservoir and drinking water project by Tamil Nadu in the upper Cauvery catchment. Which of the pairs given above are correct? Let's see what will be the right answer here. Yes, Mekadethu is basically not in the Tamil Nadu, but it is in Karnataka. Alright. So therefore, the third is incorrect, but we have 1 and 2 which are right. So answer is A, that is 1 and 2 only. Now coming to the next one, you can give the answer in the comment box as well later on. Consider following statements regarding India's demographic indicators and the population policy. We have first, replacement level fertility is defined as the total fertility rate or TFR of 2.1 at which a population exactly replaces itself from one generation to the next. Then, the National Population Policy 2000 advocated for cohesive, target-driven legislative measures to achieve population stabilization. And third, socioeconomic indicators such as female literacy and access to reproductive health care are primary drivers of declining fertility rates across different communities. So, which of the statement given above is correct? Now, these are the questions that you can practice for your mains examination. We have first one, centralized high-stakes examination systems can create significant administrative vulnerabilities and socio-economic pressure. Critically examine the structural and technological reforms proposed by the K. Radhakrishnan and Nandan Nilekani committees to restore public confidence in India's national examination system. Then we have second, India's strategic autonomy dictates that foreign and security policies cannot be compromised to satisfy short-term economic interest. Evaluate this statement in the context of India's current economic and military posture towards China. And third, discuss the constitutional and administrative challenges of using safe harbor provisions under Section 79 of the IT Act to regulate decentralized communication tools in light of the Anuradha Bhasin 2020 proportionality standard. So these are the questions that you can try for your mains examination as well. Like I said earlier as well, that today is the 27th of July, and today actually we are launching the batch for the GS Foundation, that is Resolution P2I batch, which is available in English language, and also there are the evening sessions that will be conducted. So you can enroll into this batch by using the code that is BRS Live, that will give you or it will fetch you the maximum discount. Also remember that all these batches that we have, they are based upon the SMART model, where you actually get the structured classes, the mentorship, the assessment dashboard as well, and even the revision and the test series. So you can enroll and ultimately you can benefit in your preparation for the civil services with the trusted and the best of the faculties that we have at the StudyIQ. So that would be all, but do not forget to like the session. Do like the session, do share the session with your friends, and even subscribe so that you do not miss any of the future updates or the Hindu analysis every day in the morning at 9:30 a.m. So that would be all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care and Jai Hind. Thank you, Apex, Cloud Shinobi, Miss Verma and the others who have joined me onto the platform and have done the complete analysis. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. And I'll see you tomorrow at the same time at 9:30 a.m. for another important analysis.